Hello, and welcome once again to All of the Avengers. I am Van Allen Plexico. I am your host. You can find me at www.plexico.net and at White Rocket Books. And today we're going to talk about, there's my name down there, we're going to talk about Avengers 14, which the cover says is Even an Avenger Can Die, which I think is a better title, but the title actually of the comic inside is Even Avengers Can Die. And this is a very interesting comic, so we're going to get into it here in just a second. But first, I wanted to show my new little mural that I've added up to the top of the bookcase up there. I thought it kind of fills in that space. It looks pretty cool, right? So it's the classic Bronze Age Avengers and other heroes and villains. I thought that was pretty cool. So, all right, now let's go ahead and minimize me so that you can see more comics and less me, right? So I'm going to go ahead and bring over there we go. And I may need to get rid of the little banner so that you can see it better. Boom. There we go. Okay. So we're going to talk about Even an Avenger Can Die, issue number 14. Now, I thought this was an interesting issue. There's a couple of reasons why it appealed to me. One is there's not really a supervillain in this issue. It's kind of a science fiction story, which is sort of unusual for an Avengers, particularly back in this time, I guess. We'll get to that in just a minute. It's not actually scripted by Stan Lee, which is unexpected. It actually has a couple of other people that I'm going to get to in a second again. And it's kind of a one-off story, but yet it was completely set up by the ending of issue 13 with Nefaria when the Wasp got shot, which is, again, kind of an unusual thing to happen to an Avenger, to actually just get shot, get gunned down by a bullet, but that's what happened. And so Henry Pym, who we already know has mental stability issues, spends quite a bit of this issue distraught. I'm sure it doesn't help his mental stability to have that situation going on. All right. So first up, as we always do, we're going to look at the cover. And the cover, to me, I like that it reveals there's not really a villain, right? Just it looks like a bunch of flunkies. If I saw this issue cover and hadn't read it already, I would think that these were guys working for Doctor Doom or working for Nefaria again, or, some master Zemo, some master villain like that. But they're not. And in fact, before this issue is over, the Avengers will actually be teaming up with them. I'm going to have to lower this back down now that you've seen my cool little mural, because it's there. It just is throwing me off to have it pointing the wrong way, pointing too high. Okay. By the way, this is issue 14, so we do still have that main featured lineup of Avengers here with Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, and Giant Man. And of course, normally you'd have the Wasp, but she doesn't. It's funny, she doesn't even appear in this issue. I think not even wounded. She's just always off screen being talked about a lot, but we never actually even see her, lying there needing help, which I think might have helped the story a little bit. But that said, still an interesting story. A couple of things about the cover. One is there's no word balloon. This might be, I hesitate to go firmly and say it's the first issue we've covered that doesn't have a word balloon, but it's one of the few that doesn't have a word balloon. One of the few, doesn't even have one of those big explosions, right, with words inside of it, one of those jaggities. It's just, it just has some text. Even an Avenger Can Die. And then I like it says an epic length Marvel masterwork for the new breed of reader. So this is already Marvel, and we'll get the date in just a second, but I think we're in 64, 65 by now, somewhere in there. They've already figured out that Marvel is attracting a different kind of reader than comics had been attracting up until that point, right? You're no longer getting just the little kids. You're getting older readers who want something more sophisticated. And that's a dilemma that I keep running into looking at these issues, is that they're more sophisticated certainly than a lot of what was available, probably more than anything that was available back then from other companies, DC, but not just DC, others. But on the other hand, and before I say on the other hand, and you also, there's a lot more text, right? We've talked about this. There's captions, there's thought balloons, there's dialogue. There's probably too much of each of those, right? These are very text heavy comics back then. I think one of the reasons I love the Bronze Age so much, the later, the late 70s, early 80s so much, is I feel like, and I guess it's whatever you read first when you were that age. But for me, that period struck the perfect balance of words in a comic, right? Because I feel like in the early 60s, they had too many words. And I know that sounds weird to say, but because words are great, and you you want words in your comics. So it's not just pictures, but comics should not have so many words stuffed into the panel that you can't even see the picture, right? There should be a balance, illustrations and text in perfect balance. I think comics from the 60s and earlier sometimes had too many words. I definitely think that comics after about 1999, 98 have too few words in a lot of cases. But it's that late 70s, early 80s period is where you really, to me, get the good balance. Okay. So we're going to see, oh, and we also have the Mighty Marvel Marching Society with the little thing pointing at you. But otherwise, it's a pretty clean cover, and I give them credit. This is I think this is an underrated Avengers early cover. And in fact, even Iron Man doesn't look bad. And we've already established on this series that they really made Iron Man look pretty, pretty rough. And you're going to see that again on the interior. Speaking of which, all right. The Mighty Avengers, no, nothing else, just the Mighty Avengers up here at the top. But they were called the Mighty Avengers. We haven't really addressed that every it's not on the cover ever back then, but every Marvel title of a character or a group, I guess to a certain degree, had some kind of an adjective. The Uncanny X-Men, the Amazing Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, they always have an adjective. And the adjective associated with the Avengers has always been mighty, the Mighty Avengers. But we don't always see that. And it's certainly not on the cover, but there you go. You don't get the little, and there came a day when Earth's mightiest hero. I guess they hadn't called them Earth's mightiest heroes yet either. But they do have that. Now, as I said, it's even Avengers Can Die. Lots of text, lots of text. Oh, we do see Jan here. Okay, there's so much Hank that I didn't even spot her in the same colors there. But I'm just going to zip along through this issue, through the preliminary parts, and get to the actual story. But here is the key thing here. Plot and editing by Stan Lee, but the scripting was actually done by Paul Lakin and Larry Lieber. Now, we all know Larry Lieber. That's Stan's brother, Stanley Lieber and Larry Lieber. It's just that Stan changed his name and Larry didn't. So part of the scripting is by Larry Lieber, Stan's brother, but part is by Paul Lakin. And I got to be honest with you guys, I don't know who that is. We're going to have to do some more research. And I should have researched it before I went on the air, but it slipped my mind to look him up. So we'll just say he's somebody that apparently was scripting some Marvel comics back then, and we'll do some research for a future episode. Now, get this. This one has layouts by Jack Kirby, but then pencils by Don Heck and inking by Chick Stone. So this is actually one that was plotted by Stan, and done. The layouts were done by Jack, which we haven't seen in several issues. But yet neither one of them finished the issue. So you have quite a group of people working on this issue. And I think it kind of shows, because this story is very uneven. But again, I think it's a story that is appealing in some ways, more than I expected. When I saw the twist reveal coming in this issue, I thought, but it has a couple of twists, as we'll see. So yeah, I'm just going to move right along here. There are some things worth noting. The Avengers are just emotional wrecks. They're all over the place because Jan's been shot. let's see, the things I want to note. They Thor immediately notes that Jan suspects her lung has been injured, and the doctor is shocked that Thor could guess that apparently a bullet hole in your chest and you're having trouble breathing would mean that you have a lung injury. So the doctor's like, wow, the bullet has punctured her left lung. Your suspicion was quite correct. Tell me, have you ever had medical training? And Thor's like, oh no, I almost gave away my secret identity by saying that the bullet hole in her chest and her having trouble breathing could indicate lung injury. I'll leave that with you guys. So they do x-rays, and apparently, and I like that Cap says there's nothing left for us now except prayer. That's something of note here, because prayer comes up multiple times in this issue. I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm making no editorial comment whatsoever about it, other than to say there's not a lot of Marvel comics historically that do that. And I wonder if that is a Larry Lieber or a Paul Lakin thing. It doesn't seem like a Stan Lee thing. You guys, let me know if I'm wrong here. Correct me if I'm wrong. But dwelling so much on the power of prayer, as this issue does relative to like every other issue of Marvel Comics I've ever read, it seems unusual. Again, not saying it's good, not saying it's bad, whatever. But it just struck me when it jumps out at you that much, you realize you don't see that very often. So I thought I would just throw that out there for you to kind of chew on. Oh, one other thing. We don't know it yet, but this is almost an issue of what if. Now, for like the first 90% of the story, you don't know that it's an issue of what if. But by the end, you're like, hey, this is kind of an issue of what if, and you'll see why. There's a lot going on here that's kind of like, really? They did that? They did that? Okay. So they're sitting around, and I still wonder why Giant, I guess he's just so distraught that he's forgotten to shrink down to normal size. So Pym spends the first half of this issue as Giant Man. I just, bending over in rooms and hunched over and everything. Now, the thing that's interesting to me here, too, is that the doctors seem to say that being shot in the lung is incurable and she's going to die in 48 hours. Which, I mean, Reagan was shot in the lung and he was almost 70 years old at that point and he was fine. So why is Jan, a healthy young woman, why is she so much worse off? It's not really made clear how this injury is as devastating as it apparently is. So, I need it that when I look at the comic over here, it's over there so that I'm looking at the comic like you guys are. But I have it here on the screen to the right, and that's just how it is. So I'm sorry. Somehow they decide there's only one. Oh yeah, the doctor suggests there's one doctor in Norway that knows how to cure lung injuries. And so they ask Thor to go get him and bring him back, apparently whether he likes it or not, the doctor. So Thor flies all the way to Norway, finds what he believes to be Dr. Svensson, who talks like a supervillain, by the way. And Thor just grabs him and says, we'll continue this conversation in the air. In other words, I'm going to kidnap you. And if you have issues with that, you can tell me what your objections are to being kidnapped by Thor as we fly. You talk to me as we're flying. Okay. So they get him there to help Jan. And then he says, I won't do it. I can't do it. And Hank grabs him and pulls off his mask. And it turns out that Dr. Svensson randomly is an alien in disguise. He's not a space phantom. That was my first thought, is a space phantom, but it's not a space phantom. It's some other odd alien in disguise who immediately dies. So the Avengers have just killed this person trying to save Jan, and Hank's over here pounding on the floor while the alien dies. So now they go out to try to find the real Dr. Svensson, because apparently only he can save Jan. Okay. I feel like they could have come up with a better ailment for her than shot in the lung that only one person could cure it. I mean, like some disease, some alien disease or something, you know, something that it's a little more plausible that only one person could save her, but we have to go with it. So they go out looking. That reminds me of like the Squadron Supreme cover. But anyway, they go out looking for Dr. Svensson, and they're using different methods. Oh, the old newsboy. I mean, that's Rick Jones and the Teen Brigade. I almost said the Newsboy Legion. Same thing. They're looking, and Tony Stark has a Geiger counter missile. It will let them know if it encounters any alien radioactivity. So apparently aliens are radioactive. I wasn't aware of that, but sure, it doesn't find any. But then they decide that because the ants haven't found. I like this. They kind of decide that because the ants haven't found the doctor must be somewhere where there aren't any ants. Okay, so it must be like the North Pole. Okay, works for me. So they fly whatever this is. I guess in later days this would be a Quinjet, but here it's just random purple aircraft. And Thor is using his hammer. Now, again, this is something we need to talk about. In this issue, Thor uses his hammer in several ways I've never seen him use it before or after. So again, let me know if you know something I don't. But does Thor often use his hammer, or ever use his hammer, to guide him to something, like it knows something he doesn't? Does he use it almost like Spider-Man's spider sense? Because that surprised me that Thor uses it to guide him to something, like it knows what he doesn't know. It can sense things, and that it has like a spider sense. It's like a Mjolnir sense, or Mew Mew sense, like in Thor 2. So my Uru hammer head is pointing to the north. It is there we will find what we seek. So apparently, like a compass needle points to magnetic north. Thor's hammerhead points toward Norwegian lung doctors. That's a pretty specific power for his hammer to have. Okay, so they get there. There's no sign of life, but my enchanted hammer never errs. Perhaps they are hidden beneath our feet. It's the only answer. So randomly, the Avengers just start digging in the snow. Again, this is a part of this story that really threw me. I'm like, they just start digging in the snow. Okay. Sure. And blasting repulsors at the snow. They were right. They fall through a tunnel down to the ground where they find more aliens, and they have a battle. And, when we get to battles like this, we got to kind of fast forward because, okay. So they run off the aliens. They get to this hidden underground city. My gosh, how many hidden underground complexes have we already encountered? That's how Wasp got shot, I believe, the first time, right? I'm thinking about 2 issues ago, there was the Mole Man's underground kingdom, and then now there's these aliens' underground kingdom. They get zapped by a paralysis ray and brought before the head alien, who then proceeds randomly to describe the situation of their people, which is that they were in a space battle against some other aliens, and they fled to Earth. But they found out on Earth they can't really breathe the air, and so they kidnapped. So this is not the... They kidnapped Dr. Svensson from Norway to help them with their problem, their medical problem. So when Thor thought he was kidnapping Dr. Svensson, but he was actually kidnapping an alien, that was not the first time Dr. Svensson had been kidnapped from Norway to help somebody, or somebody that was believed to be Dr. Svensson, right, was kidnapped from Norway to help somebody with a breathing problem. Apparently this just happens to him all the time. He's in a coffee shop in Oslo having some coffee, and somebody kidnaps him because they have a loved one with a breathing problem. So this just happens. Okay. It's a thing in the Marvel universe, is that Norwegian lung doctors get kidnapped, and we just have to accept that. So Thor suddenly reveals he hasn't been paralyzed at all. He attacks the leader, and there's another fight. man, they really just never. I don't understand why they made Iron Man's helmet look like that back then. I've never understood it. Anyway, they fight. Yeah. Thor, boom, boom. They're all amazed by the hammer. Finally, Dr. Svensson comes forward and says, "Stop, cease this senseless battle immediately. There's no need to continue the carnage. I am Dr. Svensson. I insist that you halt your attack or I'll no longer serve you." So he basically says, "I won't help you anymore." Now, this is interesting. The doctor says that he's been helping the aliens. They have weapons which can destroy all of Earth in an instant, but they're not interested in us. They simply want to hide from those who are searching for them. And the alien commander says, "We pledge to cause no harm to Earth if he would give us the care we need to allow us to hide on this planet till our enemies have gone." And he says, so I've stayed on my own free will, not as a prisoner. Now, how do you square these two statements? We told him that we will not destroy the Earth if he helps us. And he says, "I've stayed as my own free will, not a prisoner." I'm thinking if you're blackmailing somebody by, excuse me, threatening the entire Earth, you're not exactly your own free will, right? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna choke. I choked myself up on that. I guess that's just a semantic point that we can argue, right? But if you're being told, "Oh, we're not forcing you to stay. You're staying of your own free will. But if you choose of your own free will not to help us, we'll just destroy you and your entire planet. But it's your choice. It's your choice." All right. So even as this is going on, the enemy aliens find them and start attacking. "We are discovered. Begin Operation Last Resort immediately." And so Avengers Assemble rings out. Now, whoa, is this the first time? We've talked about this. Sound the battle cry. It doesn't seem like it's the first time, and it shouldn't be the first time, but we've talked about how they say other things, right? They say Avengers something else. Is this the first big Avengers Assemble? I feel like I need to go back and reread the first 13 issues again. Surely this isn't the first time that they say Avengers Assemble. And here's a question too. If this is the first time that that's been used, was it Stan Lee that came up with it, or Jack Kirby, or was it Larry Lieber, or was it this Paul Lakin guy? Could somebody named Paul Lakin have invented Avengers Assemble? This is all news to me. I almost feel like Googling this now, but I don't think it would. If I don't know of many who would. Maybe Kurt Busiek would know. Some of the Jarvis heads might know, but I'm honestly not sure now. This kind of I saw that when I read it when I reread it the first time a while ago before the show in preparation, and it just went right by me. Because you're reading an Avengers comic and Thor yells Avengers Assemble, you're like, yeah. But now I'm like, wait a minute, that might be the first time. Interesting. So we will check on that. Okay, so the aliens say they're just going to leave. They use a teleportation device to send the Avengers and Dr. Svensson back to New York, where he operates on Jan. We do see Jan there a couple of times. All right, I was wrong. I mean, Jan's always lying down and unconscious, but we do see Jan a couple of times in this issue. And Giant Man is back to Giant again, and he's like, frantic. They're all there's just a lot of dialogue going on here. So the aliens, the Kalu, their defensive devices have blown up the enemy detector, but now the aliens are attacking, and they're these lizard people. And so they take off, and we get this whole big rigmarole about the aliens, which we really don't care about. We hope we could remain hidden till they left this part of the universe, but now they've found us. We're forced to fight. We've no choice but to destroy them forever. And then they are going to go 1,200 light years from Earth. It is there we shall engage the enemy in final battle. So they depart. The whole fleet takes off in an instant. And then we get another one of those things that I've commented about many, many times, which is you have to conclude the entire story in one page. We don't know how the battle is going to go. We don't know how Jan's operation is going to go. And in one page, in 7 panels with a lot of text, not only do we get a little bit of closure on the aliens, though not enough, we get a little bit of closure on the Avengers and Jan, but we also get something about the prayer again. And I think it cropped up again, and I didn't mention it kind of in the middle there. In fact, let me go back a couple of pages to, I want to say somewhere in here they talk about it again, but maybe not. Oh, there's Yubawaza. We'll get that in a second. But this is where you find out this whole issue is almost a what if, right? Because here in the deserted, empty city, the Watcher shows up. They are gone. All that remains is a fleeting memory in the minds of the Avengers. 2 alien races about to battle for survival with Earth as their battleground. It would have meant the end of mankind, but the human race has now been spared because of one dying girl. So in other words, because, let me make sure I got this straight, because Jan was wounded and needed the doctor to help her, the aliens had to leave, and because the aliens left, they didn't fight at Earth, and so Earth doesn't get destroyed. None but the Watcher can comprehend the workings of fate. I gotta agree, because I'm not sure I comprehend it. I kind of do, but I'm not the Watcher. And he says, I mean, to be fair, Uatu says here, none but the Watcher can comprehend the workings of fate. And by that, he means the plotting of Stan and Jack and scripting of those guys that, Larry Lieber and Paul Egan. Okay. Even I, who have observed for ages, who travel through galaxies the way lesser races traverse the surface of their own planets, even I cannot know what the future will bring. Perhaps the Kalu will triumph, or they may suffer annihilation, but humanity will never know. So we don't get any closure really on the aliens. They go off 1,200 light years from Earth to fight each other, to fight these lizard aliens, and we will never know, apparently. And I wonder, what happened, and I wonder if, not only do these kind of plots get revisited later in books like the Avengers, but sometimes years later, a writer will come along who will go back and, give you a little more of it, or the untold story kind of a thing. And I wonder if there's ever been a story that I don't know about, and it could be, has there ever been a story that told what happened to the Kalu? I don't know. So now I must depart to observe the final outcome, for I am the Watcher. So the Watcher knows what happens to the Kalu, but we don't. As for the girl, really the girl? It's a grown woman, Uatu. Come on now. You're better than that. She's a grown woman. As for the girl men call the Wasp, many have prayed for her, and the power of prayer is still the greatest ever known in this endless, eternal universe. Again, not saying that's good, not saying it's bad, just saying it's kind of unusual, unexpected, and surprising. And I wonder which of the writers was most responsible for that. And Stan edited it, and he didn't take it out. Not that he should have, again, but it's one of those things that makes you go, interesting. Okay. So even the Watcher fades into space. Then I think it should be as, right? Then even as the Watcher fades into space, but they left the as out, Mr. Rosen, the operation is over. 4 of the Earth's mightiest crusaders watch the weary surgeon with burning eyes, none daring to be the first to speak until, of course, it's Hank, who's still bigger but not huge. Tell us, doctor, we have to know. Well, I'm sure he was going to tell you. That's why he came out there. He's not going to come out and say, nope, not going to tell you. You'll just have to guess. Did she survive? The operation was successful. The girl, God, what the heck, man, will recover. And we cap it off with Let us now leave the Avengers. Strong men should not be seen with tears in their eyes, nor should they be disturbed as they lift their faces heavenward in solemn, grateful thanksgiving. The end. So again, there's more heavenly thanksgiving, just a very unusual way to wrap up a story. But as always, the Avengers ends with a tiny little panel with a lot of text in it. It always seems to go that way. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this story, this issue? It was kind of a nice. It was different. I mean, some of the combat was the same we've seen in almost every issue. The fight scenes are always not. The fight scenes are never terribly interesting in these early issues, and in a lot of later ones too, to be honest. But not a lot of character development or anything, just a lot of Hank being upset. And we got the new thing about Thor and his hammer having magical powers we didn't know. So there's a lot to kind of chew on in this issue. So while you think about if you're going to get your Yubiwaza subscription hooked up, mull over how this one ended and let me know what you think. And now we'll go fast forward to the letters page, where at the end of it, here's what you've been waiting for: the inside scoop on the next issue. For those of you who've been wondering what's happened to Zemo, he's back again, more deadly than ever. This time he has a fight to the finish with his arch enemy, and for once we really mean to the finish. So if guest stars, thrills, action, and suspense are your dish, we'll meet you here again for the big bountiful-ish number 15 of the Avengers. Until then, if you see any strange alien ships landing in the Arctic, pretend you didn't notice. Don't go around being a troublemaker. Man, this was a weird issue. So we are going to get back to a little more traditional Avengers matters next issue with the return of Baron Zemo. And he's going to be fighting to the finish with his arch enemy, which I thought was Captain America. So we'll see. All right, gang. This has been Avengers 14. Even Avengers Can Die. I really do want to hear your thoughts about this issue. So leave them in the comments or in the Patreon comments, and I'm looking forward to sharing them next time around. We'll see you guys with Avengers 15, and then we have the big 16th issue coming up with new guest hosts along with me. So I'll see you guys then. Avengers Assemble.